Yeah, I get it, we're a few months late on this topic, but hey. Thank you to those in the most recent Vancouver Canucks video who did indeed comment Terry Fox. That was our keyword of the day. Stick around to the end of this video for a chance to be featured in the next Canucks video by commenting that keyword. But today we're talking about a topic that if you told me this, let's say 2 years ago, yeah, it's 2021 right now, right? 2 years ago, back in 2019, maybe earlier in 2018 as well, yeah, I would have absolutely loved this topic over here. Now, the source we're pulling from is the same article we spoke about in the previous video on this YouTube channel, talking about Jack Roslovic and a whole bunch of other teams that potentially wanted him. But today we're talking about a player who was on the fourth period's off-season trade watch list of 2020. This is the top 25 most interesting players who might be on the block, who might be in the rumblings of trades, let's just say. And this article was recently updated on December 27th, 2020, just before the new year. I was on this article and looking for stuff to talk about with my Vancouver Canucks. We already pulled one topic from this article for Vancouver, talking about how Brandon Sutter apparently had interest from the Red Wings and the Arizona Coyotes. There was that whole hypothetical situation that went on over there. Obviously, Brandon Sutter has not been traded. He's still a Vancouver Canuck, but the Red Wings, the Coyotes, if they're interested, then hey, we had that discussion. But if you go over onto the Vancouver side of things and you look a little bit further, you can see some other players who apparently the Vancouver Canucks have had their interest in. Let's take a look at this one over here. It is the sixth player on the players who got traded in October list right here. Andreas Johnsson of the Toronto Maple Leafs, traded to the New Jersey Devils on October 10th, 2020. The Toronto Maple Leafs are looking to shed salary, and it looks like they might be forced to move one of Kerfoot or Andreas Johnsson. Spoiler alert, they traded Johnsson. Given the team's cap restraints, both players might end up going. Johnsson has more offense to his game and might be more appealing to some teams. The teams reportedly with interest were Buffalo, Arizona, New Jersey, Vancouver, and Columbus. Now, we're not going to talk about any of the other teams right here. I just want to focus on the Vancouver side of things, because had the Vancouver Canucks actually shown interest in Andreas Johnsson like this article suggests, it would have been probably something that I personally would have liked, but practically it would have been difficult to convince me that it would have been something the Canucks should have pursued. Andreas Johnsson, if you don't know, he is a former top draft pick from the 2013 NHL entry draft, and I say top, no, he's not a top guy. He was a 7th round pick drafted 202nd overall. He's 26 years old already. He's a left wing, right wing player, 5'10", 181 pounds, drafted by the Leafs back then. And ever since 2013, he had been playing in the SHL, the Super Elite, all this stuff, and he slowly, over time, started getting quite good. Like, really good. By the time his last season in the SHL finished up in 2015-16, he was just under a point-per-game player as a 22-year-old in the SHL. He went over to the Toronto Marlies system, played 75 games, had 47 points, started scoring some goals too in the postseason, 6 goals, 11 games played, and Maple Leafs fans were like, whoa, this guy's looking to be real good, eh? A 7th-round pick coming out of nowhere, showing himself off in Sweden, and actually doing some pretty good things. Hey, I love that. And I liked that too, because I was partly a pretty standardized Leafs fan, a secondary Leafs fan I would say, because I still liked the Vancouver Canucks the most, but we did make a few videos talking about Andreas Johnsson and what this guy was able to do. Take a look at this. This is the Andreas Johnsson expectations video we made 2 years ago, where I was talking about what we think is going to happen with this player. I'd always been a big fan of him, talking about what he's done with the Marlies, etc., and eventually, he did do some good things for the Marlies. 54 points, 54 games played in 2018, 24 points in 16 games in the postseason. He absolutely went ballistic in the AHL. And that's when Leafs fans were like, bro, this guy's going to be good. What in the world? I remember this really specifically. We were heading into my first year in college, and I was like, yeah, this guy's going to be an underrated player to play on the Leafs. You know, you have Marner, you have Matthews, all these guys are really good, but keep an eye out for Andreas Johnsson. I would tell that to a lot of my friends, because I did have a lot of friends who were Leafs fans, because, hey, when you go to a institution of technology in BC, you're going to have a whole bunch of people, oddly enough, who are indeed from Toronto or who cheer for the Maple Leafs, so we had a lot of talks about the Leafs, etc. I talked about the Habs a lot too, which is why I became a Habs fan, but I was a big fan of Andreas Johnsson, and in his first year in the NHL, he did not disappoint. 43.73 games played, plus 4 points in 7 games in the postseason. This most recent season, he was injured quite a lot. He missed out the first part of the return to play as well against Columbus. He came back in that last game where they ended up losing. And yeah, Andreas Johnsson, after that, was traded to the New Jersey Devils because his $3.4 million cap hit until 2023 was a little bit too much, even though he was a very good point producer the year before. And, you know, it's just the way things unfolded because the Maple Leafs needed to make that trade. They traded for a guy in Joey Anderson who was an RFA. They signed him to a very, very cheap contract. Anderson was signed to a 3-year, $750,000 deal for a guy who probably could be an NHL player because he kind of was that with the New Jersey Devils. So, talking about the Vancouver Canucks, if you wanted to come over to Vancouver and say, okay, if it was Joey Anderson that was traded to Toronto and that's all it took, could the Vancouver Canucks have gone out there and, let's say, maybe traded an Ashton Sautner or somebody who actually could play in the NHL, but who also has that luxury of being on a minor league deal? Well, there aren't really too many. I guess you could say Olli Juolevi, but, like, you're not going to trade the guy who has the status of a 5th overall pick for an Andreas Johnsson in these circumstances. Also, the Vancouver Canucks and their overall defensive situation, yeah, it's kind of difficult to pin down where the Canucks could be flexible with in terms of who they could get rid of. Which is why when you go to the forwards, you take a look at the guys they had. Hey, Justin Bailey's over here, Mark McCallus they recently signed. There are a few interesting players who definitely might be able to be NHL talents, but I just don't know if the Vancouver Canucks would be willing to go out there and, say, trade somebody like that in a trade which is essentially upgrading the asset you have, because Andreas Johnsson is indeed $3.4 million on the cap. The Canucks have their own cap problems too. And, you know, if they wanted to go out there and say, yeah, we want to improve our forward core, this is a move that does it. It's just, this trade was done on October 10th, and at this time, the Vancouver Canucks were kind of doing other things. They were super involved in the Oliver Ekman-Larsson talks, and they put that above all their other priorities. They also tried to go after Tyson Barrie, too, and that didn't go well either. The Vancouver Canucks at this time put themselves in a spot where they pretty much sacrificed negotiating with Tanev, negotiating with Stetcher, negotiating with Tyler Toffoli, who is another NHL caliber top 6 scoring player. And they were just like, okay, darn, we just left out all of these guys because we were too busy trying to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So, to me, even though it says here on the website that the Canucks did indeed have interest, that might just be more of a precautionary. That might have just been Vancouver being like, okay, well, this is a guy who might be on the block. Hey, let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation about it. Because I highly doubt the Canucks actually would have pursued the trade, because at the time of the trade's actual execution, it doesn't align with the timeline of Vancouver Canucks overall moves, because the next day, I think, or 2 days after, they ended up trading for Nate Schmidt, and that was the only thing they actually did that worked, aside from the Braden Holtby signing. So it doesn't really make sense to me to think that the Vancouver Canucks actually had a shot here. But, you know, if they actually wanted to go out there and acquire a player of Johnsson's caliber, just re-sign Tyler Toffoli, bro! Just go out there, give him a $4-point-something million contract, and I guess, yes, Johnsson is indeed cheaper, yes, Johnsson is indeed younger, yes, Johnsson indeed still has room to grow, but it just appears that the New Jersey Devils were there first, and they gave up a package of a guy who was an RFA whom the Leafs were able to sign for a very cheap contract and say, yeah, okay, give us that Andreas Johnsson. Let's play him with Jack Hughes. That's going to be great. The opportunity, man, for Andreas Johnsson. Ooh, I love that. It's going to be so good for him going into the long-term future. But, Canucks fans, talk to me in the comments what you think about Andreas Johnsson and this idea here that the Vancouver Canucks had interest in the Swedish winger. Because, personally, if this guy ended up on the Canucks, I would have loved it, because I think he's a very good hockey player, but the timeline of where everything aligns with when the trade was made with New Jersey, where the Canucks were in their own negotiations and their own plans at the time of that trade, it doesn't really make sense to me to think that the Canucks actually had a shot, even though I probably would have liked having this player on the team, even more than a Tyler Toffoli, because he's making less than Tyler Toffoli, and the Canucks still have cap problems of their own. Hey, why didn't they just trade Michael Furland for this guy, and the Leafs could put Furland on LTIR, no questions asked? Why wouldn't that work? Actually, would that work? I don't know. I don't think it would actually, no. It wouldn't have been able to go down like that. But talk to me in the comments what you think. Also, if you made it to the end of this video, comment down below in the comments section. Lucas Raymond. Let's confuse the heck out of everybody, because Andreas Johnsson did indeed play for Frölunda, and Frölunda housed Lucas Raymond this year. He's a very good Red Wings prospect, so let's confuse everybody in the comments talking about Lucas Raymond. But yeah, for Andreas Johnsson, tell me in the comments what you think about him and the Vancouver Canucks. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.